Okay, welcome back to the renovation house. This day is about 3 weeks in the coming. When we started this project, this house was relatively livable, but it had a couple of problems in it that we needed to uncover. So one of the things we like to do, particularly in older houses, is gut them out all the way to the final studs. In this case, we had a lot of flooring that needed to come up due to some structural issues that we covered in previous videos and termite damage. What I'm holding is a floor joist that was underneath one of the most significant load-bearing walls inside this house. So what you can see is just how bad the termite damage was to this 2x8. There's just nothing left to it. It's just paper, and you can peel it all off. And again, this was holding up not only the walls, but the roof and a major beam above it. So luckily, back in the 70s, when this house was remodeled, the front porch was enclosed and they put new CCA treated lumber. So I have a sister joist right here under this floor that is CCA treated and is in perfect condition. There is no evidence that the termites even tried to get into this board. That's good news for us. It gives us something to build from. Directly below here is our foundation. We have a concrete block foundation, and this is what's left of the sill plate that should be under it. So here in just a moment, we're going to lay a new sill plate down there, and we're going to lay a new floor joist here, and then we're going to start building out the floor joist in the rest of the house. Throughout this project today, in this video, we're going to lift this house in several different places with 20-ton jacks, support the floor, rebuild a new beam underneath it, and replace, I think, 6 floor joists altogether. So let's get started. Okay, so today's an exciting video, at least for me. I love this stage of construction because it's a challenge for me. You have an existing structure here, and you're having to effect repairs to it, and you have to secure the structure that you're working on as you're tearing it up, which makes for an interesting challenge. So I love these types of projects, and they're probably a little hard for some of you that might be watching this and might just frighten you completely if you thought about having to do this to your house. But I've done this lots of times, and all of this stems back from when I was a really young guy and I was building decks for people. And almost always, when we jackhammered away a pair of concrete steps that were next to the house, the sill plate and the rim joist would almost always have either termite damage or water damage. As a matter of fact, I was so confident that those things would exist that sometimes I would bet the customer that if I was wrong, I would pay for the deck, and I've never had to pay for a deck. So I was right all the time on that. So have a little bit of experience in that, 40 years plus actually. So what we've done to start with is safety is the first and foremost thing you have to have on your mind. Sitting right here right now is this spot where that load-bearing wall was, where we've talked about in our previous videos. We talked about this load-bearing wall that was full of termite damage, and we pulled out the damaged rim joist and what was left of the sill plate. Since all those things are gone, it was very easy to put them back. All we had to do was lay our sill plate down here, secure it, and then lay our floor joist next to it. And 2 floor joists over there that were cut were simply just laid in place. So no big trick to any part of that. But there is a trick to this part, because above me is a roof that we had to support. So you find places that you can anchor to that are safely securable. So, this floor over here has good floor joists, and these are sitting on top of them. So we've transferred the load from up above down these posts to that floor joist, 1 floor joist over from the we're working on. We also have some stuff over there attached to this floor joist so that we know that we have solid things to work on. So all of that stuff that's above our head is safely held in place by these temporary supports. Now, right here is an electrical outlet. So if you're not comfortable messing with electricity, you're going to have to get an electrician involved at this point. Same thing with plumbing. If there's plumbing in these walls that needs to be moved or dealt with, you're either going to have to find a competent friend, or hire a certified electrician or plumber to deal with those types of things. So to get here, we had to remove the floor, and the part that we started with was over in that kitchen where the water damage on that floor was really, really bad. So bad that it was uncomfortable to walk on. Fortunately, we didn't have to replace any of the floor joists over there because they were good. But let's go over there and talk about how we pulled up the plywood flooring to get this project started. This is the floor in the kitchen that is really, really soft, really messed up. So I wanted to show you how to do this. It's not as hard as you might think. First thing you do is strip all of the floor coverings off, the tile, the vinyl, the linoleum, whatever you have. Then you're going to find a seam, and you're going to drive a wedge down in that seam. Now what you want to look for is your nail holes, because it's going to be easier to pick it up between the nail holes instead of at a nail hole. So just take you a chisel, drive it in there until you feel the floor joist, then you're going to lift it up. Now I keep a screwdriver handy so that I can put that in there to keep that from going back down. And then I'm going to just take another crowbar, drive it in there, and then we're just going to work our way down the seam, pulling this up. Okay, so I'm now in the crawl space in the spot that used to be the restroom. And if you will recall, when we started renovating this house, this was a pretty disgusting room. The toilet that had been sitting here was not bolted down. In fact, it didn't even have a wax ring under it. So every time someone used this toilet, the waste would hit the floor, soak into the plywood that was here, and literally just run down the outside of the sewer stack that was right here. So this was really disgusting, and there was a lot of water damage here. And you can still see some of the water damage on the end of these floor joists that go that way. There's also a little discoloration on the beam. Keep in mind here in just a little bit, we're going to add some lumber to this beam. So I've tested this beam here is pretty solid, so we don't have to replace these boards. They're just going to be discolored. But we do have some damage on the ends here. So what I'm probably going to do is cut these ends back about 3 inches to get past that really bad debris. And then our new floor joist, I'm going to let run long back in there. So if you're running a floor joist next to another existing floor joist, technically they call that sistering. But so this is going to be kind of a modified deal that I'm just using the excess length on my 12-foot 2x8 to go back there to sister back here to help shore that up, as well as just be a standalone floor joist. So we won't need floor joist hangers here because we have direct bearing on beams both on that end and on this end. And in this case, this is going to be very easy to stand up because I've not yet lifted this beam. So keep in mind, this beam is bowing downward right now, where the catastrophic failure was just right over there. So I thought it would be easier to roll these floor joists in place while I had gaps, so to speak, between all of this. And then when we lift this up, it'll all tighten up. So literally all I have to do here, because we have the entire floor opened up, is just stand this floor joist up in the place that I want it, and I'm going to pull it over here. Okay, so I tailed these floor joists here to make them look better, and that's really the only reason why. And so you can see there's a little bit of meat there and a little bit of color there now, so that makes them look better for the inspector if we ever decide to sell this house. So I'm literally ready just to roll this floor joist up in place, put it where it needs to be there, and I'm going to push it over against here. Now, we have not yet fixed this beam. That's why that was easy to go in there, because this is sagging a little bit. So I'll be able to put it in there. Once we lift this beam up and correct it, this will all be good and tight against the deal. So all I really want to do is just put it in place and make sure that it's the way I want it. I'm going to put a screw through there just to hold it in place. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this one. And we will have repaired the floor joist here under the bathroom. And this looks much better already. And now for the thing we really have been looking forward to doing for this entire project, and that is fixing the sag in this beam. So I'm going to get geared up to do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so let's talk about the beam that's holding this house together. If you'll see, to this side of me is a concrete block pillar, and to this side of me is a concrete block pillar, and spanning between them is a pair of 2x8s that are sandwiched side by side like this. What happened is that this is actually undersized for the house in the span. This should have been 3 2x8s or greater, like 2x10s or 2x12s would have been even better. But in this case, I used 2x8s, and they should have been sandwiched together in a laminated form. I'll show you that upstairs in just a second with a little model I've made for you. What happened was this seam is out in the field between the two pillars, which made a weak spot for it. To make it worse, the other seam is right here. So you have a very poorly structured or supported part of the most important part of the house, and that is this beam that holds everything above it in place. And then later they took and put what either was a floor furnace or some kind of air return, maybe for an air conditioner or something, and they split two of the floor joists, which allowed this to roll sideways and split this joint apart. So essentially, there's nothing between that pillar and that pillar holding up the house. And guess what sits right above this point? Yep, it's that wall structure that we've been concerned about all along. So now we can see why the house has settled the way it has, because this beam was able to roll and split due to having a poor structure here. So let's go upstairs and look at my model so I can show you exactly why and how that failed. I think the best way to explain what happened down there is with this little model. So let's pretend that these two blocks are the concrete block piers that I pointed to earlier that transfer the weight all the way to the ground, the footing and then the ground. So this is a representation of the beam that is under there the way they built it. There are two 2x8s underneath there, and the joint that they had spans out between the two pillars. Now, this is bad because all I have to do is put a little bit of pressure there and I can break that beam, just like what happened. But that might hold if you didn't have anything directly bearing on this particular joint. But what happened was, when they took the floor joists that went off of there were two of them, and cut them and made them weak to where they could pull, then this whole thing started to roll. And this is what happened. And it broke that joint and then allowed for the catastrophic failure this way. So how are we going to fix that? So what we're going to do is we're going to correct this by adding another 2x8 next to it. But that still makes for a weak spot here. So we're going to cut out one. First, we're going to support all this with 20-ton jacks. We're going to put temporary supports underneath there and hold it all up because I don't want a house hitting me on the head. So we're going to support all of that. Then we're going to put in a new 2x8 there. We're going to leave one of the joints in place, and then we're going to start and put another 2x8 on the other side. We're going to recreate this entire beam from end to end, not just in the middle. So what happens then when you have this entire three-way laminated beam underneath here? I can put all the pressure I want on that and it will not collapse. All of the weight from up above can go on it and it will not collapse. This is the way this house should have been built in the first place. This is the way we're going to take it back to. Okay, now we're getting ready to lift the house, or actually we've already got it lifted. We wanted to make sure that we could do it in a safe manner, and I can't emphasize that enough. If you're going to try to do something like this, you have to think through the safety of all of this. You have to have blocks in place to keep it, if it happens to collapse, that it catches on the blocks, and we have all of those in place. And we've got a pair of jacks here. We've got a 12-ton jack and a 6-ton jack. We have one on the footing there, and then we had to make a footing here to push this up. We needed to lift this floor about 1.25 inches, a strong 1.25 inches, and we did it very slowly, very incrementally. And as we push that beam upward, we would then add shims underneath, so that if this should happen to kick out, which it will do from time to time, then it would fall and catch on the pylons, on the piers, and you wouldn't lose the ground that you've already made. Because it's not just lifting the floor, it's lifting this roof and the ceiling and everything above it. Everything's being pushed upwards against gravity, and that makes for some strange pops and strange creaks as you do it. Just take your time, be very slow. So I'm relatively comfortable with this. But like I say, it's hard and it's slow, and I'm ready now to put this last piece in to sandwich, and then we're going to use some clamps to tighten it all together. Then we're going to use screws, in this case, to cinch it all together, hold it tight. Then we're going to let it down. So here we go. Okay, so we're ready to let this down. I've got it all screwed in place the way I like it. We created a temporary beam here, and I'm holding it together with an H type of bracket because you don't want it to roll. It can have knee action and roll and kick out your jack. We don't want that to happen. So that's what and I didn't explain that a second ago. So when I let this down, it's all going to try and come down together. And so I want to let each jack off slowly as I go. So I think this one's probably got the most tension on it. So we're just going to let it down easy. Oh, and you'll be able to hear the house moan and pop up there. So here we go. We're going to let this one down. Oh my, that one's tight. Here it comes. Okay. Okay. Anyway, so our project today appeared to be somewhat successful. We're going to clean all this up out from underneath here, and we're going to go check the floor and make sure that it's nice and level. Let's go upstairs. Okay, now that we're back upstairs, I just want to show off the repairs that we have done. I'm standing in what used to be a very disgusting bathroom. If you'll remember, there was all kinds of water damage to these floor joists and all kinds of patchwork of stuff that they had done. It's all back to where it should be, back to its beginning construction place. It's nice, it's clean, and it's functional and firm. And over there where they had cut those floor joists, that's all gone. And over here where the termite damage was, that's all gone and repaired too. Now, in the comments, I've had a lot of people asking me why we would be repairing a house that has termites. This house doesn't have termites currently. At some point in its history, it had a pretty good infestation over there underneath that load-bearing wall. But there's also evidence this house was treated. And you'll find that by drill holes in the concrete block or perhaps the concrete sidewalk out front, something like that. And there's also monitoring traps in place at this house. And in the entire time that we have had this house tore apart in demolition, we've found no evidence of living termites. So the answer to the question is you would not be making repairs to a house that had an active termite infestation. You would be calling a qualified termite exterminator and having that taken care of first. Now, how do you know that you have termites other than the fact that you can see the damage? Well, they are a small little insect that looks a lot like an ant, but the mature termites will grow wings every 1 to 3 years, and then they will swarm and move on to your neighbor's house or some other wood source in the yard. If you see those, you definitely want to call and have an exterminator come take care of it. Now, the one last thing that I want to talk to you about is the evidence that there were termites. Should we decide to sell this house at the end of this project, a home inspector will come and do an inspection for the potential buyers. Guess what? There will be no notation that there was ever termites in this house. You want to know why? Because all of the damage is gone. So if you looked at this house, you will never be able to tell that it ever had termites because it's all been professionally repaired. I'm Jim V. Brock from Maintenance Minute. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because we're dropping new videos just about every week on this project as the progress moves forward. Thanks for watching.
Are you interested in woodworking or home repair? If so, please look at maintenanceminute.net. Hi, I'm Jim V. Brock, and I'm the host of Maintenance Minute. From my website, you can watch videos on how to build a variety of arts and crafts projects, full-on woodworking builds, and home repair and remodeling tips, too. We recently added an archive section where you can see over 40 years of projects that I have built. Please take a moment and visit maintenanceminute.net.